Carl Hopkins,
Present.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
Jim Wilson,
Here.
Kirk Martin,
Here.
Karen Kahn, Dolores Johnson, Craig Arcuri.
Here.
And I apologize, last month I misspoke your name and you weren't here to defend yourself.
Well, I wasn't here to be offended either, so
Thank
if I
you.
wasn't here, it didn't happen.
Any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment slips?
I don't have any slips, no.
Notices on Friday, November 13th at 5:30 PM. The Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Commission, at the Airport Administration, sorry. Minutes. Recommendation that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, October 21st.
Move to waive.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Move to approve as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, move to approve,
Move
thank
to
you.
approve as well.
Okay, we have the consent calendar, just briefly. We have a lease agreement with Spitfire Flight School. We have a lease agreement with Strahan and Montaigne's Enterprises, doing business as Arcady Distributing. And we have the property management report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Liaison reports. I see our city council from Santa Barbara, Frank Hotchkiss is here. What do you have to say for us, sir?
Not a whole lot, but something. The drought problem continues. The city is doing really well compared to the rest of the state in conserving, but we may have to go as high as 36% over our benchmark, which was about a year and a half ago. So we're not there yet, but we'll see. Along those lines, we're in negotiation with Montecito and the desal plant. That seems to be going forward pretty well and could have an effect, a positive effect on coming rates. In fact, they may not go, but they go up. They might even go down, but that could be wishful thinking. Lord knows I've done that before. El Nino, as you know, is expected to be a whopper, and that's particularly important for you here at the airport. So I know you're watching that, and I think you've been keeping track of that in the news. That's still guesswork, but people are talking 95%, so we'll see. We're going to have a new police chief before long. I don't know if you read, but Cam Sanchez had a really serious accident, completely not his fault, but a tire from a truck came virtually through his windshield right in front of him. I saw him that morning, and he looked like he'd been in a gunfight at the OK Corral. Fortunately, he recovered very quickly, but he's taken that as a spur to retire. So we have a national search on. Expect to find somebody early next year, maybe as soon as February. We'll see. Finally, we had an election. The two incumbents, Randy Rouse and Kathy Murillo, won overwhelmingly. Proof of the power, I think, of incumbency. And we have a new city councilman, Jason Dominguez, a wonderful guy, a lawyer. I won't hold that against him. But very sharp, speaks 3 languages fluently, plus which is English, Spanish, and German. Studied in Germany, studied in Mexico City, went to Stanford and Berkeley, so he's probably better qualified than anybody else in the council right now. He's jumped right in, and I think will be a wonderful addition to the council. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And Councilmember Michael T. Bennett from Goleta.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report, okay. The administrative reports, Direct Relief International, a recommendation that the Airport Commission receive a presentation. We'd love to hear it.
Okay. We have visitors with us this evening. To begin with, though, I'm going to ask Andrew to kind of briefly go over the staff report on this particular project. And then we have Judy Parch with Direct Relief, and also Mark Linehan, who is sort of leading the project as a project manager. I'm not sure if that's your real title, but he'll go for that. So, Andrew, if you'll begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Airport Commission. This is an interesting project for the airport because it involves the sale of airport property, which is not something that we've done in the past. The terms of the sale are governed by a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and the Direct Relief, and is subject to a number of different terms. One is the securing of development permits. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that process is, what that entails, before I let Direct Relief talk about both their existing operation and what they're proposing, because they can speak to that far better than I can. At the moment, we don't have a complete application for review in the planning department. That's the issue there is showing how stormwater is going to be handled. This is, I don't think, a project killer by any stretch. It's once that's resolved and those plans are resubmitted, then the city will begin the environmental review process. It's expected that that environmental review will tear off of the 1998 specific plan for the north side. That specific plan envisioned that the area north of Hollister would be commercial industrial use. We've amended that a few times, depending on, for Citrix and Gateway and whomever else, but all of those have fallen through. So this project is certainly similar in scope to those, and so that process will take a couple months, I imagine, and then it will go before Planning Commission. And one of the things that we'll want to be able to present at Planning Commission are comments that are received both from Airport Commission and the City of Goleta. So we'd like to discuss this item at both of those venues prior to complete project and going to Planning Commission. So with that, I think I'd like to invite Direct Relief to give their presentation. I think, Mark, you're leading it.
Good evening, members of the commission. As Hazel said, my name is Mark Linehan. I joined the board of directors of Direct Relief a little over a year ago. And I guess for some reason, all of a sudden, I was now chairing the building committee for this project, which has been, certainly a lot of fun, but a lot of work. As Andrew said, and I think you're clearly aware, we are in contract to acquire approximately 8 acres from the City of Santa Barbara airport property. That contract expires in April of this year. There is a provision where we can extend that for potentially up to 6 months. We have been going through a process to obtain our final approvals for the project. If you could put the first slide up. I think everybody knows the site, but this is our contract to purchase allowed us to buy up to 8.5 acres. And that contract required that land be on the northern side of parcel 22. When we went through all of our planning in terms of what Direct Relief's requirements were, we ended up with about 8 acres, not 8.5. And so therefore the airport, will only acquire 8, and the airport will end up with a little bit more land. I think you guys are familiar with the history. Here's the Marine Base map. We can go to the next one, it kind of highlights it. So it's all of this property in here. And you can kind of see the historical uses. There was a paint building. There was a number of different buildings from the Marine Base era. Some exist still, some do not. And then in terms of the property, in terms of developing it, we have been challenged by a number of constraints. The first constraint is about half the property, which is the blue line, is the floodplain. So about half of the property is inside the flood zone. The red line is the archaeologically sensitive area, where we're not prohibited from disturbing the ground underneath there, but certainly we have a lot of issues that should we go down there and find archaeological issues. Given those two, we also have geotechnical problems. The soil is not conducive to building a big giant building on. So we'll be putting in 262 rock columns drilled into the ground to support the structure of the building. We had some very minor environmental contamination that the airport has been very responsive to in terms of its cleaning up. So I guess what I'm telling you is that there's just been a lot. I mean, this wouldn't have been the first choice that you would have jumped on in terms of buying a piece of property, given all these constraints. But there are very few, if quite frankly zero, opportunities to have an 8-acre site in the western end of the valley. Direct Relief clearly would like to stay in the community if they could. And so this piece of property ends up being something we can work with. So to that extent, I think we've each challenge that came before us, I think we found a solution that worked. We're raising the building pad 4 feet to get out of the floodplain. That also helps us on the archaeological side, because by raising the building pad 4 feet, we're not digging down into the archaeological zones. It has, you know, some cost manifestations and some planning manifestations, but we're able to resolve all those. So taking all of those constraints, we then took what we needed for Direct Relief. Direct Relief needs 100 to 130,000 foot, 32-foot high clear warehouse in order to distribute. I don't know how much you're familiar with Direct Relief. Briefly, we distributed just shy of $1 billion in medical aid last year. We are governed in terms of this warehouse. This warehouse is governed by the FDA, the DEA, the State Board of Pharmaceuticals. There are approximately 500 and, Judy, you may know the number better than me. There's approximately 560 or 535 wholesale drug distribution warehouses in the United States of America. This is the only one that is owned by a nonprofit. This is the only organization in the United States that is licensed to distribute pharmaceuticals in all 50 states in the United States. So we've had a rapid expansion. Direct Relief, partly due to Ebola, partly due to Nepal, partly due to Haiti. You know, clearly these major catastrophes have created a situation where Direct Relief has filled in. In addition, you know, it's amazing how much we distribute in the United States. We pre-pack for every hurricane all over the eastern seaboard. We distribute to low-income neighborhood clinics throughout the United States. So from that standpoint, this growth has gone from a locally born company. I mean, this company was founded this organization was founded in Santa Barbara, and now we're doing almost $1 billion in aid. We currently operate out of 3 facilities. 1 we own, 2 we lease. It makes it challenging to try to do all of our work in 3 separate facilities in terms of storing drugs, storing medical supplies, et cetera. So the board made a decision to pursue having a state-of-the-art facility. In addition, it will have about 25,000 feet of office space to house the corporate headquarters. The site plan. Here's the pretty picture. Let's go back a little bit, Judy, that site plan. So here's the 8 acres. There is this 130,000 foot warehouse. We're currently showing is at 100,000 feet with a 30,000 foot expansion. The city of Santa Barbara City Council was nice enough to give us the entire 155,000 feet as a beneficial project under Measure E. We will make a decision within the next 60 to 90 days whether to build that expansion immediately, given our growth, or whether to do it at some future phase. Clearly, there's challenges of doing it in the future relative to construction and, you know, noise and all the other attenuate issues. But like I said, it'll be a cost analysis, benefit analysis. We have a small office component in the front. The main issue with the warehouse is security. We store a lot of drugs that people would like to get a hold of. As an example, we're not allowed to have any skylights in the building, even though that would be something considered to be, you know, energy efficiency and all those things. But the DEA will not allow that due to a former helicopters flying in on the roof, blowing the skylights, people fast roping in and stealing, you know, millions and millions of dollars of drugs from other facility. You know, the warehouse has to be 100% secure, very limited access. The truck delivery area over here, this truck area, also a secured area. And so, in fact, we had an interesting, off the cuff, today we had a executive meeting, and the people from the state of California came in, and I was unaware of this, but for the next 2-3 days, they're going to do a drill of anthrax being distributed through Southern California, from San Diego to San Luis Obispo. So the federal government, the state government, and all the local agencies are doing this drill as to what would happen if there was an anthrax terrorist deal. We, Direct Relief, end up being the warehouse drug distribution for the prophylactics relative to anthrax. So they were into our facility today. These trucks are going to be delivered. The state of California is going to be delivering these bottles that have nothing in them, but it would be as if there was an anthrax deal. And it was interesting to listen to them because, you know, one of the concerns they had, certainly with our existing facility and one to make sure our future facility is, they had likened it to an H1N1 virus issue or any kind of thing that was a terrorist act, was how, you know, the public is potentially going to find out where these drugs are. And if there was a terrorist issue, you know, how do you curtail the public from, in a panic when they make stupid decisions, from, you know, rushing your warehouse or securing your, you know, trying to get in to get their cure. You know, we certainly had spent time with the FDA and the DEA on our security, probably hadn't put it into a local environment where all of a sudden there was a potential, you know, panic or rush in the sense that if they found out that we were the ones holding the vaccine or holding the drug necessary to cure you, clearly a lot of people might end up at your doorstep. So the design you see before you is kind of what we've come up with. We did go to the Planning Commission for a concept review. We felt it went very well. Planning commissioners seemed to receive it well. We continue to refine it. It's a work in art as we get into the engineering, into the, you know, one of the requirements that our board has imposed to our committee is that this has to be a facility that, whether it be a natural disaster or whether it be a catastrophic issue, this building needs to be able to operate in those conditions. Part of the reason we're raising the building 4 feet, we're building it to a much heavier seismic code than would be normal for a building. Anything that we can anticipate, you know, it'll have solar energy, it'll have backup generators. We're investigating some of these commercial batteries that the solar system can go into. The idea being that if there is a major issue, we're operating, that we're continuing to operate in the city, in the county. Yeah, I think in terms of process, we are meeting with you tonight. We're meeting with the ad hoc committee of the city of Goleta in about 3 weeks. Our anticipation is certainly to be at the Planning Commission before the contract expires. That's about it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, just a couple. Thank you very much. You mentioned that the DRI is the only, and I know I speak for all of us here, I'm also a supporter of what you're doing. So we're thrilled that this is going to come to be. This DRI is the only nonprofit with one of these facilities?
Correct. It's the only nonprofit drug distribution warehouse in the United States.
Any thoughts as to why that is so singular?
I think my compatriot would be better at answering that question.
So these distribution centers that Mr. Linehan referred to are those who have demonstrated that they adhere to the highest commercial regulations and industry standards for distribution in the United States. It's called a verified accredited wholesale distribution center, accredited by the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, indistinguishable in the regulatory requirements from any commercial drug distribution company such as McKesson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen. So Direct Relief is the only VAUD accredited nonprofit humanitarian organization in the United States, able to distribute prescription drugs into all 50 states across the United States. The VAUD accreditation is required for that as a licensing requirement for certain states. So to be licensed to distribute into all 50 states, you have to have this VOD accreditation. Direct Relief is the only nonprofit organization to hold that accreditation.
Awesome, thanks. And then another question, somewhat different. Are there any issues with the building height and the FAA in terms of limitations that was imposed upon you
No.
that all came, no?
No, I mean, our building height limit is 45 feet. We're not off, we're not on a runway pattern. We are now. We're going to move off of it by moving to this property. We are having a small challenge relative to getting, because we raised the building height 45 feet, and then we're trying to get 4 feet, and then we're trying to get 32 feet clear under the roof for the racking system. We were about a foot off on 2 corners. The city of Santa Barbara says under their policies that you take the lowest elevation over the whole site and use that to calculate it. We tried to make an argument, actually, as of this morning, that we should use the average. We have about a 5-foot difference, and we have 2 little low spots. Unfortunately, city policy is the low spot, and we're not successful this morning. So we're going to reduce our parapet heights and screen the equipment a little differently. So it's not a big deal. It's just an architectural issue, and we'll resolve that, in the next 2-3 days and resubmit plans, as Andrew said, in order to get our final complete application.
And then thank you, and then one last question. You mentioned, as a disaster relief in the event of a just major catastrophe, do you have communication equipment that's housed there that has antennas associated with it?
Yes, I mean, it's an interesting thing. We had a long Monday was kind of a very long meeting with all of our engineers and structural people, and to some degree, you make the best guess. I don't know if it's going to be a 6.0 earthquake, a 7.0, 8 point, and so you go out and you make your best guess. We know we want to go further. As they explained to me, a normal building has like a 1.0 if you were building a building in a normal area. Because you're building in Santa Barbara, which is prone to an earthquake potentially, seismic force zone, we're building to kind of like 100% more than that. And then the question is, above that, do you take another safety margin? And we've decided to take another 25%, as if it was like a school facility or a facility that would be governed by that. We're just taking the extra approach of spending the extra money from a structural standpoint. The board just feels strongly that we need to, if it's a major catastrophic quake, I have no clue.
Right.
But we're going to try to do what we can to make sure we're operating.
Okay, and kind of as a follow-up, where I was going with that was, do you have communication equipment?
Yes.
That requires antennas and?
Yeah, all screened,
Oh, those are just screened?
all screened.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yeah.
If I could just add to that, Commissioner Arcuni, we have satellite communications set up with the county public health department now and with county emergency operations, so that if there is a regional disaster and the county's site is down, they can come in and use our site for their operations, and a reciprocity agreement is in place for us to do the same with their site.
So those repeaters off the peak up there, microwave repeaters?
Yes.
Terrific.
So, and there isn't much on the roof. It doesn't, it's not going to be anything that will be visible with the parapets that we're going to have in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just curious, do you foresee any other sort of large hurdles, and what's your timeline look like?
This conversation came up in our executive committee today. In timeline, I do anticipate that we'll be to the Planning Commission in late March, April. I'm optimistic that the city planning staff will make those dates. I believe there's a 10-day appeal period to City Council. I didn't get a confirmation if it was 30 or 45 days for a CEQA potential challenge. We certainly don't anticipate any challenges. I think we're in an area with no neighbors. We're in an area that is fitting for the facility that we're building. Clearly, given the current surrounding neighbors, we feel like we're making a major improvement and upgrade in the community. So I don't anticipate any issues coming on. I mean, it's all the small stuff of going through the process. From that point, we have some discussions that will occur with the city airport staff relative to when they're comfortable terminating the existing leases that are on the property. I think they want to feel very comfortable that they're, that everything's done and that we're ready to buy. Once those leases are terminated, we would acquire the land. And from that point forward, I've initiated conversations with the City of Santa Barbara staff relative to how we're able to pull permits, i.e., do we need to have all the permits at once, or are we allowed to pull a demo permit and then a grading permit and maybe a foundation? Assuming we can bifurcate the permits, which would allow us to expedite, we're certainly hopeful that we're open in the spring of 17. If not, then it'll be sometime in 17. That's our current timeline.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. I know all of us are very glad to have DRI here, and I'm sure most of us have realized for a long time what a great organization it is, so we look forward to this.
Well, we're happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah, we are in discussions with the City of Goleta to acquire our existing facility, which is a unique arrangement where we're buying land from the City of Santa Barbara, and the City of Goleta would buy our facility to create a new train station and transit station, which is very exciting.
Oh, terrific.
Great. Okay, I think the next and last item is the director's report.
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair. And I did get your email, so I have added a few items here. First of all, our passenger traffic, as you can see, this month was positive over the prior, same month a year ago. We're still down overall and will continue to be until January to the offset of Frontier leaving. But just on the positive side of things, American Airlines, completed their merger effective mid-October with US Airways. So now it's all just American Airlines. And that combined operation is up 6.5% over the same month a year ago. SkyWest with United, they're up 2.8% over that same period. And Alaska with their second flight to Seattle is up 25.4%. So overall, the airlines that we have were up like 7.7%, which is really good. And the last flight to Seattle, second flight to Seattle has stopped because it was a seasonal programming. So we will see a little decrease, but I think the existing ones will still continue to exceed their own measurements from the prior year. So that's interesting. Promotions under marketing and communications, the TSA pre-check that Lynn Houston, our marketing supervisor, came up with, the enrollment, she had, I believe, 960 individuals signed up, pre-registered. And then we entertained walk-ins. So we ended up with 1,524 travelers getting the TSA pre-check over a two-week period. The TSA pre-check folks were so excited they want to come back because now they think there's more out there. So that would be very, very positive. We also, as you know, next week is Thanksgiving, and so loads are really full for Thanksgiving traffic. But our parking staff is all geared up, ready to work with all of the travelers, as is the airlines. So that should go well. We want to also do Songs of the Season again in December. We're working with the local high schools to get that scheduled, and we'll give you a notice so that hopefully you can come and enjoy that as well. Master plan, Andrew and Kaufman Associates is working on. We have received comments, and now they're going through each one of the comment letters and making a response to the comments that have been received. That's going to take a little while, I'd say, a couple of months. For the EIR, yes. Thank you. Let's see, what else do I have? One other, the questions that Chair Hopkins asked, the NOAA project. NOAA was putting in the weather facility down by the self-serve fueling station, which I understand we had a little incident there this morning. The lease began in February of 2015, and they've been paying rent all that time, and they're still trying to get their permitting process completed. I have urged them to work with Andrew and with Leaf Reynolds to work out some of those issues so that they could actually get the project up. The High Sierra Grill, hopefully you're noticing just a massive improvement next door. The airport completed all of our improvements this month, and we have a letter signed off between the two parties saying, yes, the city has completed your improvements. And they're saying they're going to open the midweek of December, the second week of December, so around the 14th. So that will be very positive, I think, as well. And then the car dealership proposal that we had, and we have a license agreement which we approved, and then a term agreement once they actually construct and build. They too are going through their permitting process. We've had one look at a layout. We have another meeting scheduled the first week of December. So those are moving on. You just don't see it. And additionally, our development along the front of Hollister in the land that's remaining in parcel 22, we too have been working on our plans. And I'll be having a subcommittee meeting, if not in December, early January, to show you where we are on our development. And then can bring it back to full commission before we go to ABR for concept. So I think that, you also asked about flight school. I'm going to have Tracy give you information. It's a 141, is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Regarding what a Part 141 school is, I was asked about the definition. A Part 141 school is merely a pilot school that teaches a curriculum under a different section of regulations. The performance requirements are all the same as the training you're used to under Part 61, but Part 141 is a requirement for the school to file with the FAA, get every section of the curriculum approved. They are subject to ongoing random audits, and each of their students, their students are required to have a certain percentage of the students has to pass the written and practical exams. In addition to that, your typical Part 161 training, I think you're familiar with the fact that it's a 40 hours minimum requirement to take the private pilot test. With the Part 141 school, and they've been in existence a long time. I got my license in '77, and they were in existence back then. They were formed in, the first ones were approved in 1974. So you can get 35 hours and take your check ride rather than the 40, but you still have to perform to the same minimum standards. So the thing with the 141 school is much stricter curriculum reviewed and approved by the FAA, ongoing audits by the FAA, requirements that certain percentages of the students pass the written and practical. And in a meeting earlier today, I found out from one of our operators who operates the flight school that a Part 141 school, people can be issued a student visa to come here and attend a Part 141 flight school, and they could not get that for a Part 61 flight school. As you know, with a Part 61 flight school, you can take tests 3 or 4 times, until you pass, and they're not supervised and certified in that same way.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.